Good afternoon. As of tomorrow night at 8 p.m., we're going to close non-essential retail businesses. And I know a lot of restaurants, bars, these are your dreams. I understand that, and I hope you know that I feel that and get that in making this order.
We were kind of at the forefront of the craft beer movement, the revitalization, I guess, the Renaissance. Certainly, we're known for barrel aging, and we live in Bourbon Mecca. The history of Kentucky is very intertwined with alcohol. When the Irish settled here, they brought music and then whiskey, and that's where the bourbon came from, and the Germans brought the beer. And Kentucky has continued to grow, and really proud of our alcohol heritage.
Starting tomorrow evening, all our residents will be subject to a stay-at-home order.
Stay home, stay safe, save lives.
We are past urging people to stay at home. It is now the law.
I'm going to put out the order today to close all restaurants and bars to in-person traffic. We are to the point now where this is a step we have to take.
Governors recognized that this was a big deal. A deadly virus was coming to their states, so they stepped up. They stepped up quickly and took extraordinary power. They told people to stay at home. They declared which businesses were essential. We thought that we needed to slow down the spread of COVID.
We're becoming crushed under a tidal wave of unfathomable numbers.
We are slowing the infection rate.
A surge in infections.
Slow the spread of COVID.
A lot of our employees in the service industry live check to check. When I realized it was going to be an extended period, we took our food, which was perishable. We had about $80,000 in inventory. We gave it first and foremost to our employees. Then we took the rest to charity, shelters mainly, and got rid of the food. We had no option. Any beer that was dated, it's perishable, we threw away, down the drain.
I think you have to ask yourself, what is an emergency? And how long does an emergency go on for?
Emergency powers are powers that the legislature has granted to the governor to act swiftly when life or property is at stake, and there's not really time for the legislature to convene. Typically, it was used for something like a natural disaster, a hurricane, a tornado. It was mostly just moving people and resources around. It wasn't closing the economy or a lot of the other things that we've seen.
Once we saw 15 days to slow the spread, it kind of gave these different governors and different mayors the control to go out and say, I'm going to do what it is I think that needs to be done, and I kind of don't care if I'm stepping on your freedoms and stepping on your rights.
There wasn't the usual influence that a normal citizen could have if it was done through the legislative process. And so they were pretty arbitrary. They benefited certain groups. They're not even considering the impact that would have on you when making these rules and placing these restrictions on businesses.
Yeah, the ever-changing guidelines. Initially, we had to put tents for outdoor dining. We put heaters in both because it was dead of winter when all this was taking place. It was so crazy that you could sit inside as long as you were outside in a tent, but you couldn't sit inside a well-ventilated sanitary environment in a restaurant. We spent over $100,000 in the tents, plus the sanitation stations, protective gear that we had to have all of our employees wear, the masks, the gloves.
My personal favorite example was in New York City when they opened up some of the dining, and they said, okay, if you're a bar and you serve food, then it's okay for you to open up, which is a little bit of a head scratcher. But then if you serve chips, it wasn't enough. So you had to serve dip, as if the dip all of a sudden magically prevented you from getting COVID.
What was really crazy, you could sit at a table at a bar, but you couldn't sit at a bar. And then they allowed you to sit at a bar as long as there was a plastic divider, no more than 2 people together in that little section. It's a magic wall. Yeah, will not pass that plastic. There's also a curfew. It was 10 o'clock initially, then 11 o'clock, then 12 o'clock. So apparently COVID would only come out after midnight. You couldn't plan for the next week, the next month. You didn't know what the capacities were going to be. You didn't know what the restrictions were going to be. The effect on our industry, it was catastrophic. We lost over $2 million in revenue. We'd been doing every cost-cutting measure we could possibly do, and frankly, we were getting to that point. I know people that had their heart and soul and life savings in their companies. I know people that did, unfortunately, commit suicide. It's something I think about every day, how desperate they must have been.
We went through a period where the government picked winners and losers. They decided who was essential and who was quote unquote non-essential, who was going to thrive and who was going to fight to survive.
During Prohibition, the distilleries that received federal approval to produce medicinal bourbon survived, and those that didn't get the approvals failed. You saw something very similar. Hospitality industry, for some reason, was targeted like crazy. Meanwhile, big box stores were not. The Targets of the world, the Home Depots of the world that thrived.
If it's one person making the decision, then it's the elite few who have access to the governor who are having their voices heard. If you are in a business or an industry that doesn't have that access, then you're left out into the cold.
The reality is, small business is independence. They are decentralized. They are everything that big government isn't. And the only thing that small businesses agree on is that they want to be left alone and they want to have a fair playing field.
Today, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear and his legal team challenged 3 restaurants that filed a lawsuit to end his COVID restrictions in the Kentucky Supreme Court.
The last thing I wanted to do was to sue the governor.
The Goodwood team is arguing Beshear's orders were unconstitutional, and the court should determine if the General Assembly should be able to write the laws for the Commonwealth.
My grandfather gave his life fighting in World War II. I've got to continue to stand up for freedom, stand up for liberty. Entrepreneurs, we can have sand kicked in our face 20 times, and you think, oh, good, you know, no one kicked sand in my face today.
People know what's best for them. They want to protect themselves, they want to keep themselves safe, and so they should be heard. And not only should they be heard, but a lot of times they should just be trusted that they'll do the right things for themselves, for their businesses, and for their communities.
I'm in the hospitality industry. There's nothing I love more than providing food, safety, fun for my patrons. We did what we needed to do, and fortunately, it's proven to be the right thing to do.